Welcome. This is Curiosity, Not Judgment, and my name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So, we have been talking about a particular subject that makes us a little bit nervous to cover because it is one of those hotbed issues. But I think it is important that we do open up the conversation because we are definitely getting into the season where there's going to be a lot of family and friends around, and there is the potential for conflict around religion.
And spirituality.
Yep, that's right. So, I thought we could approach this episode not as, who's right, who's wrong, has nothing to do with that. More so, how do you deal with people in your life that have opposing views to yours? And how do you take a curious posture, step away from judgment, and position yourself to have a engagement or interaction with people in your life that maybe has a different tone or temperament than in years past?
And if you don't have any controversies and everything's perfect in years past and there's nothing going on, then maybe we should have you on as a guest and you could tell us how that works.
Yeah.
But I think most people do have these kinds of discussions, and they always say around the never around the Thanksgiving table, don't discuss religion or politics. But, there may be approaches where that doesn't have to be a conflict. And I think especially around the holidays, and especially we're between Thanksgiving and Christmas, as Christmas approaches, there's going to be everything from manger scenes to Santa Claus to church services, and meals and prayers,
Yep.
and people saying Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah. And how do you live and move through a world where that's going on around you when you may have a view that is counter to some or all of that?
Yeah. I was at a craft store earlier today. I had to get something, and I was listening to the conversation that took place between the cashier and the woman that was in line in front of me. And she very poignantly said to the cashier, "Merry Christmas." And the cashier said, "Not if we see you first, or not if we see you before then." Said something like that. And I thought, oh, that was a very interesting deflection. But it made me think about that question you ask. How do you prepare a response if you don't hold the same traditions or beliefs, and somebody is confronting you with maybe what could be viewed as a hot button statement?
I'm not a planner. We've talked about this before. I'm very provisional. I'm very kind of go with the flow. And what's funny is I don't like conflict, and I try to stay away from it. But my wife recently pointed out to me that if you don't like conflict, you could probably do a little bit of planning and avoid it. And I thought, oh, stop it. But you're right, and I love you. So, and I've been thinking about that. So, we talk about how do we respond from our values versus react in a situation. Well, if you said this year, when this situation arises, I'd like to do this, that could be nothing but helpful.
Sure.
Right? And so maybe thinking of a few scenarios that you're going to come up against from prior experience, or you could anticipate are going to happen, think about what a useful response is going to be.
Yeah. And, every family has their traditions, and every family has their different way of, trying to ensure that traditions carry on to the next generation. And inevitably, you're going to get to a generation that doesn't want to carry on those traditions if they're associated with religion or spirituality. It's just inevitable that that's going to happen at some point. And so how do you begin some of those conversations, making sure that the relationship stays intact and that love is demonstrated, and the individual with whom you may not see eye to eye with anymore, there can still be a very pleasant engagement? And so, to your point, some advanced thinking and some pre-planning may go a very long way.
It's funny you said advanced thinking, because I think advanced thinking is advanced thinking. And I think that, you may come across people who are like, oh my goodness, you pray, are you this church or that church? And I had a bad experience with that. And, what could be our response to that? Oh, well, sorry, you had a bad experience, I've had a good experience. Or do you say, sorry you had a bad experience, most religions I know, matter of fact, all of the religions I know are made up of people. People are imperfect.
Yes, indeed.
Therefore, religions are imperfect. And I think that's the difference between religion and spirituality. I saw a great bumper sticker once that said, religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for people who've been there already.
That's interesting.
And I thought that was good, because I think there are a lot of people who, when they get in tough times, they always say foxhole prayers, or, this person on their deathbed found God, or something like along those lines. When we're at our wit's end, when we feel like we're at the edge of our own strength, we often think about maybe some higher strength or higher power than ourselves. And I think that that's absolutely true. And I went there because I think that sometimes you can argue about religion, but religion is, again, filled with people and interpretations from different people about different things. Even within the same religion, people are often
absolutely.
vastly different. And so I think that a little bit of tolerance goes a long way there, because I think that if we are brought up in certain environments and certain cultures, with certain religious overtones, people say, well, they're a cultural Jew or a cultural Christian. In other words, they do some of the practices of the culture, but they don't go to synagogue every week,
Right.
or they don't go to church every week.
Right.
And I think that, how do we, or should we get offended by someone who chooses to go to a certain church of a certain religion every week?
Right. Well, and I think increasingly we're seeing, just from general polling that happens, the rise of what they consider the nuns, no religious affiliation. And so if you are somebody who values religious tradition, attending a church service, doing a certain prayer gathering, whatever may be very important to you in terms of using that practice to celebrate the holidays, and those in your family or your extended circle with whom you want to celebrate maybe have gone and shifted into that nun category, how do you proceed in a loving, nurturing relationship in a curious format? And so I think one of the questions that I've been thinking through as it pertains to this is, all right, this may be potentially a source of conflict, and if it is, why? And to ask the continuing series of why questions. I was part of an exercise recently. I said, you need to ask 5 why questions at least to try to get down to the bottom of it. So, let's just role play a situation where I said, I expect you to come to Christmas Eve service with me.
Why?
Well, it's something we've always done, and it's really important to me.
Why?
Well, it's what I did with my parents, and I want you to do it with us.
Why?
Because, and then you start to get stuck, right?
Right.
Like there's a certain number of whys that you get to, and then you maybe can't put your finger on a reason. It's just something that you want or something that you expect. And so if you're able to continue to peel that onion back, further and further and further, I think a lot of times the end answer might be because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that the choices that you make are different than my choices. And if there is a heaven and a hell scenario in your faith practice, where do you end up on that side of the equation, right? So I think fear really drives a lot of those conversations and expectations. And so if you can put a pause on your fear for a moment and really consider, is the act of somebody, your child, your grandchild, your cousin, whatever, is the act of them going to a service or a prayer gathering or a whatever with you more important than the relationship and the ability to be able to speak into their life in the long run? And back up and maybe ask yourself some different questions as you kind of go down that why spiral.
Yeah, and as you were doing the whys, I I was thinking about different responses to have there, and I think both sides can reach out if the relationship is important. If I do want you to come to Christmas Eve service with me, I can say, look, I'd love you to come. Let's try it the other way.
Okay.
I'd love for you to come to Christmas service with me.
Why?
Because I want to go, and I just want you there with me because I enjoy your company.
That shuts that down pretty fast.
Well, but you could say why.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not expecting you to be saved tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, oh my goodness, your life's going down the wrong path. Come turn it around with me. I'm just going to this service, and I'd love to have you there because you're family.
Yeah.
Just like if I was inviting you to dinner.
Yeah. Well, so you have stated up front what the expectation is. It's not that I'm looking for you to convert to my faith.
Right.
I'm not looking for you to make a proclamation. I just want you to be with me because I enjoy being in your presence.
Exactly.
I enjoy having you with me. And boy, that would take off some rough edges.
Well, again, that didn't require any super intelligence. It was just reaching down into, why do I want? You mentioned, fear. Well, am I afraid that the tradition might be lost in the family? Am I afraid that people at church might see me and my kids aren't there? Am I afraid that, so I think being open and honest about that is a good way to just say, if there's no expectations and you just want to go because it's kind of cool and you can hold a candle and we'll just all be there together and sing Silent Night. Oh, why? That's no skin off my back, right? That's just being with you, doing something like going to the zoo, right? And then from the other side, if I'm the person who's being asked, is it going to hurt me to go? Am I going to get pinned down and told to make a decision at this service?
Right, sign on the dotted line.
Am I going to lose, other than an hour of my time?
Right.
Am I, maybe it's important for my mom, or my sister. And you know what? If it's important to theirs, I really learned that when I had kids. I think about myself a lot, and I'm a bit of a narcissist. I think we all are to some degree, in my experience, but I'll just speak for me. When I had kids, man, I got interested in what they were interested in. And I sometimes liked something just because they did.
Yeah.
There's this new cartoon that I never had when they were there. It's called Bluey.
Okay.
I love Bluey. But I really love Bluey because my grandkids love Bluey.
Right.
And so I actually enjoy things because you enjoy it. Right? So what do I care if I go to a midnight service with you from a different religion than my own? If you're enjoying it, then I like to be there because you're enjoying it, and I'm going to enjoy it with you.
Well, so I love how this conversation, it just has so many things to be curious about through and through for both parties, right? And so I think having some of these conversations gently in a place of peace before it's the moment, like, well, you're going to church with me right now, right?
Exactly, right now.
Having those conversations up front to say, hey, I know you traditionally like to go to Christmas Eve service. I don't necessarily adhere to your practices. I'm willing to go with you because I know it's important to you, but I would ask that, you not force me to sing or force me to do anything. I'm going to honor you by being in attendance. And how do you have some of those respectful dialogues in enough advance notice so that you can not have that hotly contested moment right in the heat of everything?
Exactly. Hey, and this is what Andrea's been teaching me lately. It's like, okay, all my kids from around the world are going to show up next week. And
you have to explain that for a second.
Oh, sorry. My son lives in Bhutan with 4 of my grandkids, and my daughter lives in North Carolina in Wilmington. My oldest daughter lives here, and we see them every Sunday. So, but let's have some plans ahead of time for things so that it's not just, stressful at the last moment on certain things like that. So, what are we all doing on the 23rd? Well, we're doing this in the morning and we're doing this in the evening. And let's make sure there's no conflicts between the two, including what's on the menu.
Right.
Right. And so now I'm thinking, there probably is some wisdom in that. Right. So I called my sister-in-law and said, hey, what are you guys doing for dinner that evening? Because I don't want to replicate, what's going on. And why not do that? And to your point, well before Christmas Eve, hey, I'm thinking maybe we want to do Christmas Eve this year. You know, is that something you'd be interested in joining me? Yeah, I don't really like the church thing, and you know, well, but you know, we're all going as a family. We'd love to have you with us. We're going to go to dinner ahead of time. We may do some looking at lights afterwards. You know, that would just be part of the evening. Are you interested in doing any or all of that?
Well, and I think asking the question with no expectation is
Yeah,
key.
yeah.
And I oftentimes find myself as a parent, I'm not very good at asking the question with no expectation.
Yeah.
Like, hey, do you want to go shopping with
Sure,
me? Hey, you want to
sure.
bake cookies with
Yeah.
me? In my
It's
heart of
implied.
hearts,
It's
I
like,
really want you to bake
exactly.
cookies with me.
Yeah.
But then I'm setting myself up for failure, because if the answer is no, I'm hurt, and then I, get maybe a little defensive or bent out of
Sure.
shape, and then it does cause some friction. And so, yeah, asking genuinely, asking curiously without expectation is so difficult to do, especially around the holidays, I think. But I think it is a critical thing that we need to really practice doing. And then, if the answer is, thanks for the invite, I really don't want to join you for the service, are you prepared to invite them to other opportunities to participate if that kind of key component hasn't been met in your mind's eye?
Yeah, and I think, if we're really honest about the situation and we say, okay, look, hey, you're my daughter, you're my son, and you only get 3 no's this Christmas, right? I mean, you can say no to this, but there's only 2 more, right? Because look, we're a family, we're a tribe. We part of what that means is spending time together.
Yeah.
And I know you've got a new girlfriend, or you've got a new this or that, or a bright shiny object toy, or you want to go off with your friends, and that's great. I'd like to have some family time too. If it's not here, what's your suggestion? And what would you like to do?
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Well, we were worried as our kids became teenagers. We saw our friends' kids running off to Fort Lauderdale or South Padre Island or whatever, and so just stumbled across this in a silly conversation one time and just said, "Hey, why don't we give the kids the budget for the family spring break and let them plan where we go?" And we always spent time together on spring break because they knew they got the budget and they got to plan what we were doing. And they came up with some surprising things. And we had a blast doing it. And they learned how to arrange for travel. And
Yeah.
it was an overall great thing. But it started out with my fear that we'd start doing this
Drifting apart.
at spring breaks,
Yeah.
right? That's a little bit about what they were going to do on spring break too. But,
Sure.
But I mean, that's just being a parent. But it turned out to be, we found out with a creative solution. It wasn't a fight,
Yeah.
anymore of, oh, well, we're going to go do this. No, I'm not. I'm going with my friends to
Yeah.
so-and-so. They just had a blast, right? And whatever they wanted to do, we did.
Yeah.
And there were some disasters and some fun and some laughter. And by the end, I mean, they're doing that with their kids now.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I know another kind of hotbed of potential conflict during this time of year is blended families. And what do you do when you've got to do multiple households for a holiday, multiple religious traditions, multiple church services, etc.? How do you navigate that? Maybe you're raising your child in a different faith practice than your parents. Definitely an opportunity for conflict. So how do we do some forward thinking about conversations in that regard?
Yeah, and so my sister has, her husband comes from a family of like 11 siblings.
Ooh.
And so they decided a few years ago, I thought this was brilliant, that they don't do it on the day.
Okay.
Because it's just 11 different conflicts all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
With everybody now married and et cetera.
Yeah.
So they just do it on a different day. This year, we're doing the Opedal family Christmas is going to be on the 23rd in the morning. And then the other side of the family is going to be the 23rd in the evening because people are traveling on the 24th and 25th to try to get to other family.
Interesting. Okay.
And so does the day matter as much as getting people together
Yeah.
and in celebration?
Right. Having some flexibility.
And I think you just said the key to everything, right?
Yeah.
Is if we're motivated to be together, then we're going to be motivated to have flexibility. It's like the old saying of, if you want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't want to do something, you'll find an excuse. So if you want to do something, then you'll find a way,
I like that statement.
right?
Yeah. I was helping clean out a garage for some friends aging parent who is selling a home, and so coming across toys and stuff from 20, 30 years ago, and we unearthed a pogo ball. Do you remember those? It was like a rubber ball
Yes,
with a
with a platform on it in
and
the
you would
middle of
stand
it.
on it and jump.
Yes.
And his eyes lit up. He's like, "Oh my gosh, let me see it." And I just said, "It's never going to work. It's rock hard. It's lost its flexibility. It would be one jump and the thing would shatter." And so, when we stay malleable, when we stay flexible, there's a little more spring, there's a
Great
few more hops
visualization.
that
Yep.
you can take.
Yep.
But the second you turn brittle, you do that first jump and it's, it's goodbye fun. And so I think really that is such a key to keep in mind during this time of year. And I'm speaking to the choir. Like, I absolutely am. I get my feelings hurt. My daughters are of the age that they are, early 20s. They are out on their own, doing their own life a lot of the time. And I long for this family connectedness. And if they choose friends or if they choose events contrary to my schedule, my desires, my wants, my hopes, my dreams, I can so quickly get my feelings hurt. And so I just want to say, like, this is not something foreign to me. This is something I'm walking through lifetime and having to be flexible about and to ask curious questions about.
Yeah, and like I said, and when you have 9 grandkids and some of those kids have different, families like you were talking about before, there's going to be conflicts, and
Yep.
you will not get everybody to every event by definition.
Yeah.
And so I love what you said about flexibility. I love the visualization of the old pogo ball, because the more flexible we are, the more we can bounce into the situation and have some creativity about. The rigidity is what gets us in trouble,
Yeah.
just like what you're saying. And I think that that's the key to this is, be as flexible as you can. Now, don't be a doormat and don't always be the one giving in.
Sure.
Don't be in a dysfunctional relationship and just continue that in the holidays. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
But if you've got healthy relationships, the more flexible we are, the more happiness we can create around the holidays. And remember, people, the holidays are like pouring Miracle Grow on our emotions and our feelings.
Yep.
And so just remember that about everybody else too.
Yep.
So as much as you are hurt because somebody doesn't seem to be making the same amount of effort you are in the relationship, you don't know what's going on with them.
Right.
You don't know how many other balls they're trying to juggle in the air at the same time, and how many relationships that they're trying to do too. And sometimes there's a season.
Yeah.
If you've got kids in college and they're home for the holidays and seeing friends, man, that's precious time.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you may not get them every hour that they're home.
Yep.
And it's not because they don't love you as parents anymore. It's they're home with you.
Yeah.
It's that there's other friends and other people that need to be seen also.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness. I feel like we could talk about this for hours because there's so much within the context of this, potential for conflict in the midst of holidays and faith practices, religions, schedules, expectations. But I think we've done a good job of posing some curious questions and letting the audience really think through their own and whatever situation is applicable. And just, again, that pre-planning and how that might save a whole lot of pain and heartache and being flexible. So we will leave you with those curious opportunities, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.
Take care and stay curious.